Hello, this is Jessica. So this week I was really interested, like my favorite part of the whole thing was the finger perception. As a child and even like growing up, like I always used my fingers in math and was always the student that was told like you can't use your fingers, like that's what little kids do and you're an adult or you're in high school, don't use your fingers. So I got really tricky about like doing it under the table or just like tapping my fingers like on the top of the table or below the table so no one would see. So I feel that I have like pretty decent finger perception. Like I know which one I'm doing. And one of the tricks that I knew before going through this was multiplying by 9, like counting and then knowing how much like 9 times something is. But the one that was the most interesting to me had to have been the I just forgot the name of it, but the one that they use in Korea, like that one. I would be really interested in learning how exactly to do that one because in watching the students do it in that old video, oh my gosh, like Chiz and Bop. It definitely looks like something that could be really valuable for students to have, and even if they are in a class or in an instance where the teacher that they're in the classroom with isn't aware of how good it is for them to be able to use their fingers, I think it'd be something they'd be able to do under the table and not be seen doing the chiz and bop. So I would definitely be really interested in learning more on how to do that and how exactly you go about like multiplying it in your head. And I know that there's the multiplication video as well, but I just wasn't sure if that multiplication is used in the chiz and bop because I saw the kids multiplying but it looked like they were still just like tapping their fingers and not so much like aligning them and multiplying in that way. I had my husband do the multiplication one and he at first was like, this is kind of confusing, but then afterwards he was like, where was this when I was a kid? And I was like, I completely agreed. Oh my goodness, it would have definitely saved a lot of time and it would have saved a lot of like frustration of like trying to do it in my head or not really being able to do it in my head, because personally it's just not something I was able to do. I had to have like a visual and sometimes physical because I couldn't do it above my desk. I had to do it under my desk or kind of like close my eyes and picture my fingers, how Joe Bowler was explaining to in her video. So I think it's really great I think it's really important for all teachers to know, and I'm really glad that I know now that using fingers is not something that's like a little kid thing, and it's not like you're not as smart if you use your fingers to do math. And I can take that and teach it to my students, and I'm really excited about that because as someone who has always explained themselves as not a math person and not great at math, I think it's really great that through these kind of like activities and becoming aware of these different ideas, I'm able to kind of take myself out of that and think, well, it's not that I'm not a math person, it's just that I didn't have like the right tools, and now that I have these tools and these really great ideas, I can take them and just become a math person, or stop saying that about myself and just really take the time to learn it. And I have always also had the idea that because I grew up not really liking math, I didn't want my students to do that. I want my students to like math and to enjoy math, or at least not hate it or think that they're terrible at it. So I think that I would definitely use finger perception in my classroom as a great way to help them be able to do the math. If they don't have actual manipulatives, they always have their fingers to back up, and it's a tool. They're absolutely allowed to use the tools available to them, which was something else that I saw in the module that I thought was really smart, because sometimes when you're doing like a test, they're like, well, you can only use this, this, and this, but it's like, well, your fingers are part of your body, and that's not cheating in any way. It's something that you have available to you. The next part was families and math. This is something that I think a lot of families get scared about, and their article that was in this module also about that was that math anxiety makes it harder for students to learn math when they're at home. I completely agree with that. I can see how that would happen, and also I think majority, maybe I'm completely wrong, but it just seems like so many people think they're not that math person, so they just get really frustrated with it really easily. There's also the change from how math was taught to how math is being taught. And I can see why that's frustrating, because it went from being taught one way for so long to being taught completely differently. And I see the benefits of both ways, the more direct way of just doing like the addition and everything, but then also the more Common Core way of like taking it in pieces and adding it in your head or doing different things like that. Because I know that personally, once I've learned more about math in this class, I realized I was doing it like the Common Core way in my head all along. Like that's just how, if I'm doing addition in my head, that's how I would do it, is I would kind of like find two numbers and kind of figure out how to mesh them together and then add like the remainder. So I think that a great way to encourage families to be involved with their child's math education is to just tell them like to try to have fun with it. Don't make it something that you're always focusing on, but make sure that when you are trying to focus on it, that it's something really fun. There was a really awesome website that was in the module this week that I would absolutely, I actually have already saved it, and I'm going to make sure that it's available to my future students and families, the Becoming a Math Family website. I was looking through the activities in that, and so many of them are just simple activities that they can just talk about and like do with their students when they're at home. So if in the link, activities to do with your kids, one of the first ones that you see is talking about space while you're building, and all it is just talking about spatial skills and being able to like look at the things and see where everything is, and also counting. And there's so many activities that you can do starting at like super young ages. Food shapes, I mean, who doesn't want to play with their food, really? So I think it's really awesome that there's so many of these resources that we as teachers can share with our families so that they're not like scared of what to do with their kids. And it seems like they're all videos. So it's not just like read an article and try to figure it out, because I know personally I have a difficult time reading and understanding sometimes. I prefer videos to be able to understand a little better. So I think videos are a great way to connect with the families too, and maybe like once or twice a week, like send out an email that has a video of one of these videos that's in this website that's just like, hey, try this with your students tonight, like, hey, try this. Or like if you're looking for a great way to interact your students like in their math homework, like here's an activity we did today that you guys can expand on, and here's how. And I think that one of the most important things in having these connections with our families and making sure and like ensuring that they're able to comfortably work with their children with math is to have just a good connection with them in the first place. Being open with them, constantly communicating, asking how you can help them at home if there's any tips or tricks that they might need. Because something that was told to me by another teacher was that a lot of times their children is their first child, so it's their first time being a parent, and they don't want to ask for help most times, but they kind of need it. And it's not, and for me right now, it's my first time being a teacher really, but after a few years, it won't be my first time helping students. And even in my first year or two, like I still have experience in it. So it's not going to be my first time, and it won't have been my first time helping students in this area. So this is an area that I can definitely help parents. So I want to make sure that I am helping them as much as possible. So moving into norms and procedures, I have worked in a preschool for the last 4.5, almost 5 years. And it's a private preschool, so it's not just like daycare. Like we're not just, the kids are playing all day. We're actually like, we're sitting down, we have a schedule, we do work. It's a Montessori, we go by the Montessori philosophy. So it's a little different than like normal public school or even like other preschools. And so the norms and procedures that I have seen have been very different than public school norms and procedures, or even just like other classrooms that I've been in. And it's crazy how different they can be teacher to teacher as well. So even though we're all teaching under the Montessori philosophy, each teacher has a different way that they run things and a different way that they have their students accomplish things. And I definitely have a few horror stories of a teacher that I was in a classroom with where she tended to lean towards the very heavy disciplinary and very heavy, like the kids had to be very quiet and we had to like do this and we had to do that, and there wasn't really a lot of room for questioning and exploring and just general like being allowed to be a kid, which is, they're kids, they should absolutely be allowed to be kids. But then I also have been in a couple other classrooms that were like the complete opposite or similar but different enough that they still had a lot of structure and there was still disciplinary like things and situations, but they also allowed the children to be children, and they also just allowed for exploration and questions to be asked and researching the questions with the students, and I think that's really great. I know that I personally, when I did end up getting my own classroom, I leaned more towards the open and explorative side of things. Like I wanted my students to know that I'm the teacher, but that doesn't mean that I know everything and that I am just as capable of learning things as they are. And we still had rules and we still had like, this is what you did. And if you broke this rule, this was the consequence. And if this and that. And so norms and procedures are very important, but I also feel that there's times where you can be a little lenient, and not so much in the sense of like just allowing like chaos to ensue, but I think that there's times where you can kind of go off the schedule if you have the opportunity and you can really take the time to explore a topic that students are wanting to learn about, or have a conversation with your students that's just needing to be had, even if it's not a normal thing that you would be doing right then. So that is my video this week. Thank you so much.